circle is going to be everything that is touching the circle is going to be selected. So then I can go also with this, and I can make whatever selection that I would like to have without that. Now I made a selection like this, or I can go like this, and I can create a selection like this. So this is also possible. And the last one, you can just go by pushing the left side button and do selections. The next one, it's called the window crossing. So there are two types of, for example, I want to select this box, I can click on it directly, or I can do a selection. Oh, let me just go to the square selection. So the thing is that when I'm doing a selection with the square selection, everything that the square is touching and everything that it's inside is going to be selected. But if I click on this and I'm doing that, as you can see, you can have it like this or like this. Now, when I'm doing selection, everything that is inside of the square, but everything needs to be inside. So only that is getting selected. So for example, now I'm doing a selection like this. As you can see, the blue box is not totally inside of the square. So that one is not going to be selected, as you can see. If I want to select only this box, I need to make a square and to integrate the box inside of that square. The next one is select and move. So I can also use it with the right click, which is here. So that button is also here. The rotate, which is the next button, it's also here. Is this one, the rotate? I select, it's already the rotate. It's working the same way as the movement. If I'm going on the yellow, it's rotating only on the yellow. If I'm going on the green circle, it's rotating only on that direction, and so on. Here, if I isolate, I don't have the possibility to rotate in two directions in the same time, as it is for the movement, where I can choose the middle ground between two axes and move them in the same time. So for the rotation, you can rotate only in one direction at the time, as you can see. The next one is the scale, where I can select one object and scale it. If I go in the middle, as you can see here, it's going to select in all the directions in the same time. But if I go only in Y and Z, it's going to scale only on that. So I can go also on this one, it's going to scale on the other directions, and I can go in the mid, and it's going to scale on the other one. If I go in the middle, it's going to scale in all directions in the same time. If I go like this and I don't like it, if I right click on it, it's going to go back. So it's always, all the selections and all the movements are made with the left click mouse pushed all the time. Oh yeah, also the scale has different types of scales. So second one, and if you right click on it, on the scale, you can have the select and transform. So here you can tell the program exactly how much do you want to scale this. This is like 100%. If I go 102, 200%, and so on. So this is the offset world, and this is the absolute world, local. Then we have select and place, where I can take an object and place it directly to the face of another object. So I can pick up an object and I can place it on the face of another object. As you can see, when I'm moving around, the object is also getting rotated by that face. So for example, if I create a sphere and I'm trying to move this object on the sphere, it's gonna go on the faces of the sphere. If I want to see all the faces of the sphere, I just go click here and I say edge and faces, and now I can see how many faces this object has. But this one also has, but you don't really see the lines because they are green on green. But if, for example, if I go select this object and I go to the modifier and I'm adding more segments to the object, then you can see those lines that I was talking about. Also here you can go and say bounding box, and now I have only the wireframe of the whole scene, or I can go only on faces and edge faces, flat color, which is just a flat color for all the faces, uh, hidden lines. So these are only different types to see your geometry: clay and edge. Um, Model assist, stylize, graphite. It's just gonna look, yeah, I don't really like it. I always use the default shading. Okay, let's move forward. Uh, this is, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is the select and manipulate. This is a little bit more complex than what I was trying to show you today. I'm gonna delete all of this and create a new object here. I'm gonna go box, I'm gonna create a box, and actually I'm gonna create a box, and I'm gonna tell this box to have 5 polygons on each face of the box. So the moment that I'm creating this, if I'm going here and say edge faces, now the box that I created, when I created here, it says 5, 5, 5, which means that the box has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each face is divided by 5. So this is what that means. So now I'm gonna do something new, that I'm not gonna right click on it, I'm gonna go to convert, and I'm gonna say convert to editable poly. And now I'm gonna select here on the selection of polygon from this, so I can select any polygon, and in the moment that I want to extrude here, in the moment that I want to select an edge from this box, this is gonna appear, it's gonna pop up. So it's called manipulate. If I click on it, it's gonna disappear. If I click again, it's gonna show. So yeah, you can actually make all kind of crazy selections with this, move on any side if you want. So yeah, it can be very helpful, even though I don't really use it that much. But yeah, please let me know in the comments what do you think about this manipulate thing. Then, okay, I'm gonna select this, delete it. The next button is keyboard shortcut override toggle. So what this means? It means that you can create your own shortcuts, and when this button is, because the program already has many shortcuts, when you push this button, it's gonna use your own shortcuts on the program. So you can go and do all these shortcuts from customize, and now it has a new button which is called hotkey editor. Before it was somewhere else. So if I chose this, I can go here, and for everything I can create my own shortcut. So for example, for this one, add quad patch, I can go here and press a key and assign it done, and then it's gonna work. As you can see right now, it already has a no, it doesn't have a shortcut. So yeah, you understand what I mean. So you can create, these are all different things that you can do in the program, and some of them already have a shortcut. So for example, collapse is Control Alt C for editable poly in the group, and you can change this by adding another one or deleting this one by clicking here. I'm gonna go more in depth of all of this later. So yeah, this is only for you to understand what's happening. The next one is snap togle. So what does that means? It means that now it's a 3D snap, or if I click on it, I can have a 2D snap, a 2.5 snap, or a 3-dimension snap. So for example, now I just put the 3-dimension snap, and it's just gonna go on all these points here. So if I go back and I do a right click, I open this menu, which shows that it's gonna click on the grid points, which are all of this one. If I deselect this, it's not gonna go anywhere because nothing here is selected. If I go on the pivot, it's gonna select the pivot, but I don't have any objects to show you. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna create an object, and now I can go to vertex, and now it's gonna select all these vertices, but it's also gonna go on the back of the object. So if I go here and say I want to see also the hidden lines, no, I want to see it. So with F3, it's gonna create a wireframe object, and as you can see right now, it can go to all these points from the objects, which are called vertices. So that's a vertex, this is a vertex, and so on. If I go to the, okay, this is, I hope this is clear, because also if I want to move this object, no, for example, I have another object with shift and click, left click, I'm just gonna create a copy of the object or an instance. For example, it's a copy now, and now if I click on this vertex, I can bring this object over this object. Pushed F3, F4 is to show the edges. So F2, F3, F4 are, these are the ways that you can actually visualize your scene all the time. So for example, now I would like to move this object from this vertex to this one here, and it's just gonna move directly. If I select this vertex here and I want to move it here, it's just gonna go directly there. So what it means that I can select any vertex from this, from this box. Let me just change the color of the box so it's gonna be much clearer. Okay, so the red box, we have two boxes now. I'm on the vertex selection. So right now, because the snap toggle is on 3 points, I can select any vertex from the first box, and I can put it on any vertex from the second box. So for example, I'm selecting this and I want to go here on the corner, it's just gonna go and attach there. If I go on the 2 dimension, is working only on when I'm on 2 dimensions perspective or view, like this one, like the top view. The 2.5 works, it's kind of in between these two, and the 3 dimensions, it's on a 3 dimensions. So I hope I was quite clear. For example, I can go anywhere. The thing is that if I go in 3D, I can take this vertex here and add it anywhere on my object. even here, for example. I just want you to remember that with Alt and middle button you can rotate in any direction. So this is the snap toggle. Then we have the angle snap toggle. So this is for object rotation. So for example, I'm going to delete the second or the red box. I'm going to keep only the first one. I'm going to click rotate, and now my object is rotating. But as you can see here, it's rotating by 5 degrees all the time. It's working like if I deselect this, it's gonna go it's much finer, the rotation, as you can see. If I click on it, the rotation is by 5 degrees all the time. I can change this by doing a right click and going here and changing the angle from 5 to, I don't know, 10 for example. Close this, and now when I'm doing the rotation, it's doing by 10 degrees all the time. This can be very helpful to do all kind of movements in the scene, and also to remember, if you do, it's much easier to bring it to the normal. Then the percent snap toggle. Oh yeah, you have all kind of options here. So all of these buttons here are here about the snap selection. Selections. Okay, here you can create a selection with some objects and you can save it, and you can have that selection saved for later. And if you need to make that selection again, you can just go here and have the selection right away. The next one, it's the mirror. Perspective, set, zoom. We have an object and I would like to mirror this object. Well, in this case it's a box, so even if I mirror this, it's gonna look exactly the same. But for example, if we create a teapot, which is here, and it's coming by default, and this was at the beginning was the logo of 3D Studio Max, and I want to create a mirror object of this teapot. Then I can just click on this and it's gonna mirror the object on the X direction, on the Y direction, on the Z direction, or I can go with X, Y, Y, Z, and so on. So it's actually transforming my original object from that position in a new position. So I can also have this transformation by having a copy and having also the original object in the same place. If I'm choosing the copy, so now I'm gonna end up having two objects, but mirrored by the middle where the X axis is. So the middle object, the point is here, the origin of the object, so it's gonna mirror that in that direction. If I click OK, I end up having two objects. So yeah, I end up having two objects by making a mirror of one of them. So I can delete one of them, I can move forward. The next one is the align. So what is align doing? I can align different objects on the same place, for example. So I click the align button, I go, and now I say that I want to have both objects with the pivot point with the pivot point. So the object that I have selected is going to go to the second one and it's going to be in the same pivot as the other one. Applying OK. I'm going to leave this open for now. I need to gonna say OK, and now if you see here, there are two objects exactly in the same place. If I make one of them bigger and I go to the front view, they are still in the same place because they both have the pivot in exactly the same place. See? So if I'm making selections, they're both there. I can select one of them and go here and say I want this one to have the pivot in a different place. Now they are both, their pivots, it's in different places. And if I go here and do so, even though I change the pivot selection center, the pivot, it's actually in the same place. Okay, this has different align ways to align objects. As you can see here, we're not gonna go in the depth of all of this, but we're gonna use some of them at one moment. Then the next thing is toggle scene explorer, which is, for me, it's kind of the same as the select by name. So here you can make directly a selection because this is on the selection menu, and this is with everything. Toggle layer explorer, which is here. This is important because actually in 3D Studio Max you can create your own layers when you create a scene. So for example, let's imagine that you have a house and the house has a ground and the ground has vegetations and so on. You can actually create layers here and saying, okay, I want to have a layer which is with the plus button, create new layer, and say I want to have streets. And then I create another layer and say, oh, not inside here, Control Z. And I create another layer and say house. And then I create another layer and say vegetation. And for example, when you work, you don't want to work on the vegetation layer. So you put all of your vegetation in this layer and then you click on this eye and the layer is going to be hidden. So you can work on the house and on the streets, and then you can hide also the streets, for example, and you have only the house object. So this is very helpful when you have big scenes and you need to work only on a small part of that scene. And yeah, it's very important in 3D Studio Max because it can become very complex at one moment and you have so much geometry in the scene, and it's better to have everything organized on layers so you can hide and open different layers during your work. I'm gonna create one lesson only about these layers and how to make them, how to name them, and so on, because it is quite important to have everything organized when you work in 3D Studio Max. In this way, when you import some stuff, you can import it directly on your layer and you can hide it and so on. It's very complex thing. Okay, the next thing that we're gonna talk about is show ribbon. As you can see, it's just showing this ribbon here. So it's cool that you can hide that, you have more space, or you can show it and you can use it. We're gonna talk more about this later. The next button is the curve editor. This is most of the time used for the animation, and you have a curve here and you can adjust it for different things. But this in general is used for the animation. So the next button is the schematic view. This is also used for the animation, so we're not really gonna talk about this right now. Then the next one is the material editor, which is gonna pop up here. So the material editor is where you create all your materials for the scenes. So here are the materials. You can just click on it and grab it here. This is nodes based, so it's everything with nodes. So for example, I can select this node and delete it, and I can create another node here. So yeah, these are all different materials that I'm gonna show you how to use it. We're not gonna use actually these ones, which are the general materials from 3D Studio Max. I'm gonna teach you how to use the materials from the Corona render or from the V-Ray render, which are kind of similar, but yeah. And it has also for his default render engine, which is Arnold, you have his materials here also. So what we are going to talk about, it's about the general, and it has also some controllers. Anyway, we're gonna talk more about this later after we're gonna create some objects and we're gonna add textures to the object. So for example, this is metal, so we need to create a material that looks like metal in this case. The next button is render setup. So after you created all of your settings, you have your scene with all the objects inside and so on, you need to render that scene. So for example, now we have this teapot. I'm gonna hit render and it's gonna show me nothing. Actually, it is showing me something, and it's rendering. I hit render, it's starting to render, and it's rendering with Arnold, because as you can see here, the default program, the default render engine in 3D Studio Max is now Arnold. But if I go here on the lower part, I can assign a different render engine, and I want to have the scanline renderer. This is like one of the first render engines ever made by 3D Studio Max, and if I hit render, it's done. This is the original render engine of 3D Studio Max. Render, this is the render. As you can see, it doesn't look very nice, but a long time ago, this is how the renders were made. For the render setup, which is all this setup, so for example, we created this and I would like to save it, this as a JPEG. I can just click on this save image and I go on the desktop and I save the image. Or I can tell the program here and he's gonna save it automatically after he's gonna finish the render. So I'm going here and has a render output. I can save files, click on it, go somewhere, write the name, save, pick up a format. I'll choose JPEG, in this case save. This is the quality, worst, best, large file, small file, smoothing of the image, maxim or normal. Okay, I'm gonna save it, and now when I'm gonna hit the render button, he did the render already, but it's also saved already here on the render output folder. So yeah, this is just the basic stuff that I'm gonna explain you later, exactly how to do your settings for the renderings and so on. Because here you can choose how many renders you can have, the resolution of the image, many aspects of the what kind of render engine, and then you can go into more complex options about it. The render button. For render production, it is Shift Q or Shift plus F9 or before it was F9. Yeah, it still is F9. So this button, it's actually the button from the render setup. It's exactly this button. So you don't need to go directly in here and say render frame window. No, the first one was the render setup. The next one is the render frame window. I click on it, and it's just gonna open the last render that I made, or it's gonna be anything in here. I can delete the last render, I can close it and open it again, and the render frame window, which is this, and the button render, it's actually this one. So the first one is the render setup, then the render frame window, which is this one, and the render button, which is this one here. You have all of them here, so it's going to be much easier to access them. So for example, if I click render, it's going to open the render. It's going to tell me that I want to override that file. Okay, yes. It's going to render directly in the frame window. And the last one are the buttons for the project. I'm also not gonna get into this right now, but you can create a folder for each project directly from Studio Max, and it's gonna save all your files in there. Also, you can save textures in there. You can save many things. We're not gonna talk about this because we're not gonna work actually like this. I'm gonna save all the time. I'm gonna have only one project folder, and I'm gonna use that one all the time, and I'm gonna save my files in different folders that I'm gonna make myself on the hard drive. So I hope you all had a good lesson today, and please play a little bit with all the things that I explained to you, and stay tuned because more stuff is gonna pop up. It's gonna be a little bit more complex than this, and we're gonna start creating our first objects. So I'm thinking to create like a simple chair from IKEA, or a carpet, or something very simple, because we need to move forward with this.
Okay, so this was the first episode from a long series that I'm gonna try to make in the next couple of months. Please let me know in the comments what do you think about the first episode and what you didn't understand exactly how it works, or what you would like to learn more, or any questions that you have about the course. In the next episode, we're gonna learn a little bit about modeling and how actually the program works. So if you didn't subscribe yet, please subscribe. This is gonna help the channel, and give a like button if you find the information useful, and see you next time. Bye.